Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the bad weather for our panel. We might have a few people running in late. Hi. Might have a few people running in late just because of the weather, but that'll be okay. Are you Amanda?
I am Amanda.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. So just before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to please put your phones away and have them on silent. And same thing goes for laptops if you have any of them out. And the panel is going to be Q&A style. So once I'm done doing my list of questions, if there's any time left, then we'll take some from the audience. So next to me, we have Bert Vandersteeg, VP Business Development and Chief Commercial Officer at Halifax International Airport Authority. Next to him is Catherine Aliang, Regional Director and Senior Trade Commissioner at Global Affairs Canada. And on the end, we have Amanda Sparks, Business Development Advisor at Nova Scotia Business Incorporated. So just to start off, I'm going to have each of our panelists briefly describe the organization they work for and their position. Anyone can start.
As she said, my name is Amanda Sparks, and I am with Nova Scotia. Oh, thank you. And I'm with Nova Scotia Business Inc., otherwise known as NSBI. And we are the economic development arm of the provincial government. We're an agency, so we're a little outside of government, a little inside. And our focus is really on helping to promote Nova Scotian companies to do more outside of our province. Ultimately, our population here is only so big, and we are here to help encourage companies to look beyond our borders to grow their businesses. And we also do have an investment attraction division where we're looking to bring in international companies to set up operations here in Nova Scotia. So my role as a business development advisor is really to engage with the business owners and help them to develop plans and access support that they need to grow their business outside of Nova Scotia.
Catherine Aliang. There we go again. Catherine Aliang, Regional Director for Atlantic Canada, the 4 provinces, as well as Senior Trade Commissioner with Global Affairs Canada. Some people know us by our former name, Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Our department is, in essence, the diplomatic arm of the Government of Canada. We're responsible for protecting and promoting and defending Canada's interests abroad and in all international fora. Here in Atlantic Canada, our focus is international trade and business development, and in fact, we worked hand in hand with NSBI to work with companies here to get them exporting if they're ready to export, or if they're already exporting, further expand their international interests. So that, in essence, is the big picture, but there are many more details to that to come.
And my name is Bert Vandersteeg. I work with Halifax Airport, essentially the new Pier 21. That's where immigrants these days come to Canada, including myself. I don't think I've got to tell you much about the airport itself. I presume you've all been through our facilities at some point. We're fast growing, very proud of our service. We just received another award among the top airports in the world in terms of customer service. Very humbled by that recognition, and I'm very pleased to be here and hope to answer a lot of the questions that you have in terms of international business and development.
Great. So how has your education and experience led you to your current position?
So we'll start here again. So my education is a little different. I actually have a degree in psychology. So when I finished at Acadia a very, very long time ago now, I thought I was going to continue down that path. Had planned to go on to do my master's and PhD, and I took a little time off, and I actually traveled after I finished at Acadia because you know, I was first generation Canadian, so I had spent quite a bit of time traveling in my younger years, and I knew that before I started my career, I really wanted a little bit more time to see the world. And when I came back from traveling, it was when I decided that I no longer wanted to pursue psychology. I actually wanted to pursue business, that there were far more opportunities for me to grow if I had gone that direction. And that was a choice I made in the early 2000s, and I started working for my family company, which was an import-export and manufacturing arm. And I grew from, you know, my first job there was cleaning toilets up to director of sales and general manager. And that really was a result of a lot of hard work and keeping my eyes open to the fact that I didn't know what was out there. I traveled to my clients. I traveled to different places around the world to see how my clients were using the products I was selling them. And that was really what gave me the ability to help the company do better. And then when that company changed directions, I then worked in the oil and gas consulting industry to help a consulting company grow. And then the opportunity came to maybe stop doing as much in terms of the actual day-to-day operations and came to a teaching role and had to help businesses do what I had done, what I had seen, both the successes and failures. And so that led me into NSBI and to working with our business owners here in Nova Scotia.
Wow. That's a great journey. Education. Well, my education is a bit diverse. My undergrad is actually in geography. I have 2 graduate degrees, a Master of Science in remote sensing, so télédétection en français, and I also have a Master's of Library and Information Science. So the message there is, it doesn't matter what degree you bring, you need to have a degree to work in our department as a Foreign Service Officer. I certainly think geography prepared me for that, because geography is so broad and it's man's interaction and man's place in the world. And everything I've done, the skills I've learned academically, applied, but more importantly, you learn on the job. It's a constant learning because of the nature of the work. Increasingly, on the trade side, we're asking for a business degree. I'm a bit old school on that. I think you want people with diverse background. And how did it lead me to my current position? I'm a rotational, what you call a rotational Foreign Service Officer. So that means I spent half my career abroad, serving Canada in our embassies and consulates and trade offices abroad, because I'm a trade commissioner, and there are various types of work we do and streams we call them. So I've been a trade commissioner now almost 30 years, and each position I do is of increasing responsibility. So I've served abroad, I've served in headquarters, and now this is called a domestic assignment. So I'm actually assigned to the office here and as the regional director, and at some point I will complete my assignment and move on to something else. So it's everything I've done, all the assignments I've had, wherever they've been, have led me to this. And I was most pleased when I was offered the opportunity to come out here, because I think it's wonderful to be able to serve in all 3 arms of our department, abroad, in headquarters, and domestically. So that's, I won't go into all the details, probably come out in the questions.
Coming through Halifax Stanfield, of course. Thank you very much for that.
Multiple times.
So I'm a little different. I studied international business, a bachelor and a master of science, and I did that on purpose because I knew at a pretty young age what I wanted, and that was work in international business. And I figured at an early stage that I wanted to travel. I grew up in Holland, a small open economy, as we call it, and I knew that is a beautiful country, but not big enough for me. So I wanted to travel the world, and I figured the best way to travel the world is to start working for an airline, one of the most global industries that you can possibly imagine. So I joined Europe's largest airline as an intern, and kind of got infected with, I might as well call it a virus, that a lot of people, by the way, in our industry suffer from. Once you're in this industry, air transportation, you don't typically leave. So The more you learn, the more you understand, the more you appreciate, which is very, very important, by the way, in our industry, because a lot of things actually don't make sense. So the longer you stay in that industry, the more you appreciate, understand, and the more you can come up with your own initiatives and ideas to help transform an industry, the more I enjoyed being in air transportation, and was happy to be offered an opportunity here in Canada a couple of years ago. So I moved around the world quite a bit. My last post was in Africa before coming here in Canada.
So what do you like about your work and what do you dislike about it?
I absolutely love engaging with the business owners here in Halifax. There's eight of us around the province that do the same job, and I get to see the weird and the wonderful things that are happening here. And so that's what I love the most. I love hearing the successes and the challenges and helping business owners and their teams work through some of those strategies. Probably what I like the least is the documentation. There's a lot of paperwork that follows every meeting that we have, and that's because ultimately we want to make sure that if I, won the lottery tomorrow and didn't show up for work, that somebody could pick up where I left off. So, that's maybe one of the downsides, but I understand its purpose.
Similar, very similar. As a trade commissioner, we work with people and companies, but it's people who are important to the companies. That's very invigorating. When you help a company succeed in the international business development plans, there's nothing as gratifying as a company telling you, you've put me in touch with the absolutely right partner that I needed for this, and because of that, we're going to sign this agreement and we're going to do this. Other aspect of people is colleagues. I have had the opportunity to work with some incredible colleagues, peers, as well as, in my case, ambassadors, and Canada is well served by our senior cadre. They're amazing people with incredible life experiences, and they're great mentors. And the third part of people is the people we meet in the countries where we serve or in the regions where we serve that help us make that connection with the Canadian companies abroad. So when we're abroad, our job is to know who is on the ground and who in that sector is important to help a Canadian company succeed in that country, as well as what's happening, that classic phrase of intelligence as opposed to information. And you all know this. If it's on the internet, it's information and everybody has it. Intelligence is what's not on the internet. And our network abroad, that's what we do. So there's three aspects to people. What I don't like, same thing as Amanda. The bureaucracy, the paperwork, the administration. It can be debilitating at times, but it goes hand in hand with being being a public servant and being in a very large organization, although we're not as large as many other government departments. But it has to be done for the very reason Amanda says. Get hit by a bus tomorrow, what happened? What's the background to that? What's left to do? So likewise, experience and reasons for this.
Well, I have bad news. Being largely dominated by private players, we also have quite a bit of bureaucracy in our industry. So I also don't like bureaucracy very much. The other thing I don't like is that in our aviation industry and air transportation, we're essentially a long chain of various players that each have a role in providing a service. So when you buy a ticket from an airline flying from A to B, you don't realize sometimes that there is, behind that one ticket, a range of service providers that each have a very small, sometimes, responsibility of making the trip possible for you. And what I don't like about that is that in our industry, we are sometimes very, very good at blaming the other when things go wrong. At an airport, and today is a great example with the current snowstorm. Of course, there are tremendous amount of delays and cancellations happening here in Halifax today and across Eastern Canada and Eastern US. At the end of the day, as a passenger, you bought a ticket from an airline and you expect a service, a certain level of service from that airline who sold the ticket to you. But what often happens, unfortunately, is that the airline is dependent on a tremendous amount of service providers that sat behind the scenes. It might not necessarily be their fault that a particular service can't be provided, notwithstanding, of course, that safety is paramount in our industry. What I do like about my role is the international part of working in global aviation, meeting people from a variety of background, different cultures, and what I enjoy most is to quickly find that common interest between somebody else, whether that's a business interest or a personal connection.
What do you find the most challenging about your work?
You know, sometimes I feel that the speed in which business works is far greater than the speed in which a government organization can work. So trying to bridge that gap between us who want to provide the businesses with the information and the lightning speed at which business works. That's one thing that I do find challenging, but you learn to embrace it. And as long as you communicate that well to your clients and all the players at hand, you can usually find a common ground to help the businesses reach their goals, but still knowing that you're going to be a little bit slower than they're hoping.
Challenges. There are many, but that makes the job really, really interesting. Everything from getting a message this Sunday that a very senior official was coming next week and get ready and here's what you need to do, only to be told today, nope, not going to take place. So constant change, and you never know what's going to happen in terms of what is going to be required for you. The other challenge is, I would think, how do I put this? In this region is convincing companies of the importance of international trade and considering expanding their business model to include trading internationally, especially if they've got something that a product, a service, a technology. A company who trades internationally, a company who exports, is much more successful, and this has been econometrically proved, much more successful, much more resilient in terms of dealing with the vagaries of day-to-day business and the ups and downs that go with economic change. Also provides much more employment, is a much more contributor to the Canadian economy. So convincing companies often is a challenge, getting out in front of them, and that's because so many business people, as Amanda knows, are so consumed with their day-to-day of the work they do and making sure they have the resources to do it and the people they do it and making sure they can pay their employees. So that's a bit of a challenge for us. What's also challenging in the international service is to be working with multiple colleagues from wherever you are. When you're posted abroad, for example, you're working with colleagues in a different culture, a different, not just a business culture, it's a nature of that country itself. You're working in a different language. You're trying to learn how to live in that country. But that's all part and parcel of the job we do, and if there's one watchword I can give you is adaptability, 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 and willing to learn. And that's what makes it fun, but challenging too.
I fully agree, by the way, well said. I also have lots of challenges. The good news is I like challenges. I so much like challenges that I think it's fair to say I wouldn't be very good in operating in some sort of a more administrating type role. So one of my biggest challenges in my current role is more of a strategic one. Where is Halifax Airport going to go in the next 10 to 20 years? Where is Nova Scotia going to go in the next 10 to 20 years? With a declining population, therefore a declining what we call in our industry catchment area, so the area in the Maritimes that airlines draw their passengers from. And then on the other hand, we have day-to-day operational challenges at the airport. Again, today is the perfect example. Weather-related cancellations and therefore lots of stranded passengers at the airport. And then the real challenge for me as an executive at the airport authority is to combine these two challenges because they're both happening on the same day. I would like to be able to think strategically today, but on the other hand, I've got a situation to deal with operationally. So it's trying to find that balance sometimes, which can be challenging.
How do you spend an average day when you are in Canada and when you travel outside of the country? What do you do first when you arrive at work?
So this might be a little different than my peers here at the table. My role is here in Nova Scotia. So we have many others within NSBI that spend their time traveling. But because my role is focused on working with the local businesses, I actually don't travel as much anymore. And that was a personal choice at a stage in my life. So, you know, as much as I've loved traveling in the past, I'm happy to have some roots here for a little while. So in terms of kind of how do I spend my average day, the first thing that I do in the morning is I get rid of the paperwork. I said that's the thing I kind of enjoy the least. So I get it out of the way at the start of the day, and then I get to spend the rest of my day doing what, fills my cup. And that is, whether it is, I just came from the International Women's Day breakfast. Later on this afternoon, I will meet with a manufacturer who is looking to figure out how they're going to come up with some money for a research project. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to meet with one of the universities that we work with for a productivity and innovation voucher. So my day can really be spent engaging in our community and engaging with our partners and businesses. So that's how I spend my average day.
Yeah. In my case, I am now assigned to a domestic office in Canada, so I do not travel abroad, except for one little aspect, which I'll explain shortly. But I do travel in this region for various meetings, as well as the fact that I've got half of my team co-located in the other provinces with partners there. I've got 2 officers in Moncton, an officer in Charlottetown, and soon to be 2 officers in St. John's. Plus I've got 2 other officers actually co-located with the various industry associations outside of the hub office in Halifax. So my job is I've traveled a lot in this region. I've been here 4.5 years, and I have traveled on business 57 times. All but 7 have been in this region. In one way, it's tiring, but I love it. It's the way to get to know the region. I have traveled outside the country for business because I am the departmental representative on something called the Joint Commission for Economic Development between Atlantic Canada and Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, for those of you who may not know, is a little part of France that's just off the west coast of Newfoundland. And because we have this agreement under Canada-France, I'm the department rep, so I have flown into the very small airport in Saint-Pierre-Miquelon, one gate, really pretty island archipelago as well. So, and often I have to travel to Ottawa for business as well. What does my average day look like? Well, I manage the team, so as a manager, you come in first and you just look around and you ask, okay, any urgencies, any crises we have to deal with? If you don't have that, then I start my day off by reviewing what's come in, and obviously it's through email, and therefore what I have to respond to right away and what it requires. I often have to go to meetings with either provincial organizations or pan-Atlantic organizations. For example, there's a group called Atlantic Federal Council. There are over 40 government departments, federal government departments in the region, and we have meetings quarterly. I am a member of something called the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Strategy on the Management Committee, and various things like that. So if I have a meeting to go to, I may be traveling, or it may be in Halifax, and that sometimes they consume my whole day. The other thing I would be working on is future planning and preparation. For example, and I'll let you all know about this, next week, Friday, we will have 3 of our heads of mission, our ambassadors from the EU, from Italy, I should say the capitals, Rome, from Berlin, and also from the EU. They will be here. They will be doing a panel at Dalhousie in the afternoon. It's open to the public and to give perspectives of Canada from our European missions. They also have a day-long program, so we've been preparing for that. So I'm on the phone with Ottawa and with my colleagues in the various embassies abroad, making sure we've got all the parts of that figured out. And then again, I get calls. Another part of my day is I get calls or emails from my team. They alerting me to something, keeping me informed, but also requesting my help with something. And that's my job, to support my team in terms of what they need to do to get the job done. So every day is different, and I walk in the door and I never know whether I'm in Ottawa or here or abroad, what my day is going to be like. I sort of have a plan, but often it doesn't happen that way because of some urgent need of somebody on your team or headquarters or whatever. So that makes it interesting, but also challenging. We're back to that word.
I won't be able to join you because I am traveling.
Okay.
And I just got back from a trip 2 days ago, so I travel quite a bit, which I enjoy, even though I'm a little bit in your situation. I think travel is not as excited anymore as it used to be when you're a bit younger. And I mentioned that earlier in my opening statement. It was my core objective, to be honest, go and see the world. And I am now at a stage where I can say I've worked and lived on 6 of the 7 continents. I'll let you figure out which one's missing. And I'm about to eventually hit 160, 170 countries or something, perhaps even an opportunity to travel to all the countries in the world. But your question was, how do you start your day and whether I travel or not? That doesn't make a difference. I start with a cup of coffee, first of all. I don't work without a cup of coffee. And then a casual conversation. If there's people around me, if I'm just by myself, then it's a quick catch up with the news and emails or other forms of messages. So essentially, not much difference, but whether I travel or not. The big difference when I'm here in Halifax in the office is that my day is full with meetings, of course, lots and lots of people to meet while I'm here in Halifax, given that I'm away so much and travel quite a bit.
What do you see as the key skills needed to work in international business today?
I truly feel that to succeed in international business is to embrace different cultures. That was taught to me from very early on in my career, is that if I wanted to succeed working with clients in other nations, I had to embrace the way that they did business and it not just be the way that I know how to do business. So I like to see myself as a bit of a chameleon when it comes to the nations that I'm dealing with. And I think the same is said here with the businesses that I'm encouraging to partake in international businesses, that I want them to see that just the way something is done here doesn't mean it's the way something is done elsewhere, and really to embrace that. So your ability to embrace and be flexible working with people from other regions, I think is a key core competency to work in international business markets.
And I'll just build on what Amanda says. She used the right word: adaptability, flexibility, openness to learning, and openness to realizing that how things work here for you. For example, if you're trading or doing business with our friends to the south, you can pick up the phone and business can be done virtually and over the phone. That's not the way it's done in so many countries. It has to be done face to face. So some of the skills you need is resilience, because you got to get on planes, you got to go, you got to meet the people face to face. You got to be open to adapting your style to their style, to be respectful of them. I've served in Mexico, and I remember going into my first meeting, and just a little story here. And throughout this meeting, I was meeting with a senior official, a senior executive. People kept coming in, and the phone kept ringing, and people came in for signing or to tell the person I was meeting something. And I was still learning. I was very, very young in the service at the time. And I went back to my office and I said to my boss, I had the strangest meeting. And I explained what happened. He says, you just met the most senior person in that organization, the decision maker, and that's the way it operates in that country. So rather than think of it, oh my God, this is so rude, this is like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting the person who can sign the checks and make the decision to partner with a Canadian company. So just that ability and willingness to learn and be open and to let yourself experience things, to be prepared for challenges. So a skill is to be prepared for the unknown and to expect to encompass it in what you're doing. Last but not least, a skill is knowing when you need help. And even before you know you need it, reach out to all of the support organizations that exist, including, in this case in Nova Scotia, NSBI, great programs, incredible officers. Reach out to us, the Trade Commissioner Service. We work with companies when they're ready to export or already exporting. NSBI does a lot of export preparedness. There's so many organizations here that are interested in and willing, and their mandate is to assist companies in doing well internationally. So that's just knowing that little part as well.
I will use two words as well. First of all, adjust. You can't be the same, I can't be the same bird whether I'm in Japan, New Zealand, Germany or Canada. And even within a continent, bird is very different in Germany from being in the UK, for example. And the key thing is to adjust. There are certain things that, certain characteristics of me aren't going to change, but I've got to adjust. So that's very, very important. And the second word I'd like to emphasize is understanding. It is very, very important to find out what he or she, I should have started with she because it's Women's Day today, what she or he would like from you, what's driving her, what's driving him, and what is that common interest that you have. So those are the two keywords that I'd like to emphasize.
Can you tell us about the types of jobs that might be available for students considering a career with your company?
I like to think of NSBI as the job lottery. I have been there less than a year, and I have to tell you, we are a force of skill and encouragement of each other. So we have various departments. I happen to work in the business development. We also have a strategy and research team who works directly with businesses to help come up with plans. So if you're someone that loves research, that's a great place for you. We have a marketing department. If that's your love and want to help market Nova Scotia or bring international business into Nova Scotia, we have a marketing department. We also have our communications. If that's your niche, look to somewhere like NSBI or any of the other government agencies. There's lots of positions in that. And then if you're like me who wants to engage and be a part of the community here, then we have our export team and we have our business development advisory team. As far as students coming in, we take 6 co-op placements a term. I have to tell you, I've seen a lot of them stay. So, if that's the part you are in your career, looking to NSBI or any of our other partner organizations for co-ops, certainly lots of opportunity there. And we're always looking for people because we know that the students that come in are our next 10 years, or we're going to help them gain the skills to go out and join the business community. So I highly consider keeping an eye. We're always hiring, and we're often hiring in the program administration support levels, which is a great stepping stone for students who have the tactical skills to help someone but maybe don't have the fully developed skills to interact with the client base yet. So it's a really great way to learn about how all of the departments work, but in a way that you're not kind of thrown to the wolves.
Likewise, we have 1 co-op placement. We're a very small team, total of 12. 1 co-op placement, and we're currently already staffed for our summer term, but always interested in knowing of other students who are interested in working with us for 3 to 4 months a year. Otherwise, for students, I would recommend within the government that if you haven't done so, you should all register with the FSWEP program. That's the Federal Student Work Employment Program. What that does, it matches your skills with needs within the federal government and will allow you to come in and work and be paid at a quite a reasonable level with any department in the government if the match is there. So if you have not done it, I would recommend you do that. In addition, if the department really likes your work skills, they can be in a position to offer you a permanent job, and you can be called what we call be bridged in, so that you don't have to compete for that job because you've already proved to the department that you can do the job. And in terms of the Foreign Service, there are various categories. As I mentioned, I'm a rotational Foreign Service officer, so I have joined the department to serve half my time abroad. We also have a non-rotational cadre, non-mobile cadre, here in the regions, as well as in headquarters, and there are various jobs if you want to be a commercial officer, which is in essence doing a lot of the support work in Canada to help these companies, or be a frontline trade commissioner. Commercial officers in Ottawa, you're supporting all the programs there. Trade commissioners out here in the regions where you're working one-on-one with the companies who are in the international business milieu. So there are various levels of jobs. And then if you're interested in the non-trade side, the department also has positions in what we call general relations. That's sort of the traditional political, the traditional view of a diplomat. We call it general relations. We also have positions for consular and management officers, as well as development work. Some of you may know that the former Canadian International Development Agency was amalgamated with our department 5 years ago, so everything to do with aid money and development is with our department. If you're interested in immigration and citizenship work, that's with our colleagues at IRCC, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. And the last but not least, we have the management stream, which assists us in Ottawa on the management side, administrative side, but also abroad. So there are many, many, many options, and basically all you need is one degree. Except for the Management Consular Service, you actually have to have a business degree, but not for the Trade Commissioner Service, not yet anyway.
That's impressive. Well, we don't have such a fancy tool to register like you do at the airport, but we do offer plenty of opportunities. At the Airport Authority here in Halifax, we employ just over 200 people directly, but more importantly, Halifax Stanfield is essentially a small village. There's 5,500 jobs available on our premises with a variety of partners, tenants at the Airport Authority. So plenty of different roles: manufacturing, retail, logistics, passenger service, other service providers, and then at the Airport Authority directly, the usual departments: finance, operational, commercial, customer service departments, marketing, PR. We hired a graduate from your university the other day in PR and marketing. So plenty of opportunities at the airport. We're growing. We're growing fast, and that will certainly lead to more employment at the airport as well. I would also advise, that's because that's my background, and it's been said before, co-ops, internships, whatever name you give a program is, I think, the best way to get a feel for that organization, for that industry, determine if that meets your interest, and then a lot of those people are staying in the industry or within that organization.
What advice could you share with a student at the start of their career?
I don't think this changes throughout your career. I think that volunteering is a big way that if a co-op is not an option for you at this point in time, because you need to have, as you're finishing school and you need to have income coming in, look to volunteer with organizations or nonprofits that may align with where you want to go. It's an incredible way to network at an early age, and I think that continues on. I have met many of my peers and certainly have had many job offers through volunteering that I've done and connections that I've made. So I think it's something that will never change over your career, but if you start it early, it can start to develop those networks early on and put you in the driver's seat for future jobs that may come your way.
Great advice. The other thing I would mention is seek out someone in the organization that you're starting with that could be a mentor to you, someone that you can go to and ask questions and maybe plan out where you want to go with that organization or maybe outside. Also, colleagues who are slightly older than you in the organization, say they've been in for 3-4 years, ask them about their experience. Ask them what they would have done differently if they had known where they are now. And the last bit of advice I would give is say yes to every opportunity. You may have a plan that says, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. But you never know what doors will open to you if you say yes. Somebody, your manager or another manager comes to you and says, I'd like for you to consider coming to work here or to work on this project. And you're thinking, well, it doesn't quite fit my plan. You never know. And I'll say that from experience because of where I am today. I would never have been here today if I hadn't said yes, 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 along the various steps in my career.
So the disadvantage of always being the last one to answer a question is that somebody before you may have just said exactly what you were going to say. So I agree 100%. Finding a mentor is key. Obviously, that is usually within that organization, but I was very fortunate to have mentors throughout my career that are still there for me if I need them. 10, 15 years ago, he or she was my boss, for example, or just a colleague. But today I can still call him or her for advice if I have to. And I'd like to be there for others now that I have a bit more experience. So that's absolutely key. I also would like to go back to earlier comments about co-ops, internships. What I did at a very early stage was I went to an organization, obviously in the aviation industry. I haven't done much else, to be honest, in life. And I said I would like to write a thesis. I had to write my master thesis. Anyway, I'd like to write my thesis for you. I think I've got some really good ideas. I'd like to do a case study. And I went to that organization and I said, would you mind paying A, my expenses, B, do you have something else in the budget to offset my cost of living? And that organization said yes. So I didn't get a salary, but I did get all expenses paid for a period of about 6 months in which I wrote my thesis. I can say I'd be very, very interested in new concept, new ideas from, let's be honest, sometimes a different generation. So I'd love to have young people go through the airport and advise me as to what I should be doing differently, perhaps.
All right, that's all the questions I have for the panel. Does anybody in the audience have a question that they'd like to ask? Don't be shy. Anybody? Okay, I have a question then. I'll kick it off. This might not go for everybody, I guess, but if you can answer it, then go ahead. So we discussed traveling a bit, and I know Bert said he's been to many places. What places have been your favorite to work in?
Yeah, that's a good one. I often get the question, what's your favorite country to visit? Nobody's ever asked me, I think, the favorite country to work in. That is a very difficult one, actually, because every country obviously brings opportunities and challenges because, you know, cultures are so different. I've truly enjoyed working in Germany. I spent a lot of my career with Europe's largest carrier, Lufthansa. The advantage of Germans, and I think I have a little bit of that in me. If you ask the people that work directly with me, they'll probably say I'm actually quite German in that sense. With a German, you know exactly where you're at. and I can say that I'm married to a German girl. um, um, so that was definitely enjoyable. But I've had, you know, great time working in Africa. It's just very, very different. I've enjoyed working in Asia. I've worked in Eastern Europe, and I'm very, very fortunate to be in Halifax now, where I think my family and I found a great place to live, and I found a fantastic place to work. So at Halifax Stanfield, we've got a fantastic culture and a unique place to work.
Awesome. Anybody have a question? No? Okay. Do you guys feel like there's anything we've missed? Is there anything you guys want to add to the panel?
Just that I wish you well, because the world is your oyster right now. There is so much out there, so many opportunities. It's a whole different career model. As I said, I've been 30 years with the federal government. I don't expect that of the current generation. And in some ways, I'm a little bit envious, because you're going to be constantly changing and doing different things and experience things and being involved in what the future holds. And if anything, to look back on where we've come in the last decade and how things are speeding up technologically and communication-wise. Careers that exist now will no longer exist, but careers we don't know about yet will be there. So you guys are on the and gals, International Women's Day, the gals and guys are on the forefront of the unknown career-wise. So be open to whatever comes your way. It's going to be fascinating.
Go ahead.
I'd like to end with a few words of advice. Listen, observe, and learn. I've started that way, and it's served me very well by just sometimes patiently, quietly sitting somewhere, taking it all in, observing, listening to the people around me, and I've learned so much, and then came with all these ideas to change things and do things better, which was crucial in my personal career development.
And on the closing note, I guess, never stop asking questions. I don't think that we'll get to where we need to go in our world today if we don't have people who will challenge the norm. You know, learn how to do it in a way that it's going to be understood and accepted within the community that you're working within, but never be afraid to ask why and why and why, because that's what's going to lead us down the path that we need to eventually reach here in this region in particular.
Great. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming out, even though we had awful weather. It's good that we even just had a small group make it out, and as well to our panelists. So thank you guys so much for coming. Yeah. Small group, but it worked out great. We'll wrap it up.